The council chambers were built to intimidate, arches of obsidian stone, curved overhead like the jaws of some ancient predator, and golden runes pulsed faintly across the walls. Delegates from 17 worlds sat around the oval table, each cloaked in silks, metals, or breathing apparatus suited to their own species. Normally the chamber rang with voices, the clash of politics, echoing until the air itself felt heavy. But tonight there was silence. On the great hollow screen hovering above the table, a single recording played on repeat. It was only a few minutes long, but no one in the chamber could look away. A squad of humans, only 8 of them, stormed a fortified bunker on the world of Kathos 4. The defenders were they. Drenhal, a warrior race famous for their brutal efficiency. In the recording, the Drenhal outnumbered the humans 5-1. Their armor gleaming, their plasma rifles spitting death, but the humans didn't falter. They advanced in coordinated bursts of fire, grenades, arcing with perfect precision, covering each other as if they shared one mind. By the 2-minute mark, the bunker was cleared. By the 3rd, the humans were setting charges and walking out as if it were a routine drill. And by the end of the video, every delegate in the chamber understood the same terrible truth. Humanity's special forces were not just soldiers, they were predators in humanoid form. They call them special forces, rasped High Speaker Varric, his mandibles trembling despite the attempt at composure. 8 soldiers, 8 against 43. Drenhal warriors entrenched and fortified. Do you see how many casualties the humans suffered? No one answered, though they all knew. The humans hadn't lost a single man. Councillor Bryn, whose people had been fighting border skirmishes with Earth's colonies, finally spoke. His translucent skin shimmered in the low light. If those are their special units, then what does their regular army look like? The question lingered like a poison cloud. Ambassador Torv of the Ulari broke the silence, voice shaking with an emotion his species rarely showed. The humans are new to our galaxy, barely 2 decades since they breached interstellar travel, and already their soldiers fight as though they were bred for war. My agents tell me the humans treat this as normal, as if violence is woven into their history. That is because it is, Varric snapped. Their records, what little they have not censored, speak of endless wars on their home world. Civilizations rising and burning in blood over and over again. For thousands of years they slaughtered each other. Now they turned that experience outward. The chamber darkened as another recording played. This time it was a parade, rows upon rows of human infantry marching across a landing field, not 8, not 40, but thousands. Their boots struck in unison, the thunder of their steps shaking the cameras. Their weapons gleamed under the sun, and banners fluttered with symbols no alien could quite decipher, but somehow understood: victory or death. The chamber filled with a cold dread. The special forces had been terrifying enough, but this was the regular army. They outnumber every standing force in this council, whispered Bryn. Even the Karen legions do not train such numbers. And their morale, look at their faces. The camera zoomed in. Human soldiers, young and old, their expressions hard, eyes sharp. They did not look afraid. They looked eager. Varric's voice dropped to a hush. Special forces are only the blade's edge. The regulars, they are the storm. For a long time no one spoke. Then, from the shadows at the far end of the chamber, a new voice emerged. It belonged to the Council's war strategist, a being who had never once raised his tone in centuries of service. "I warned you," he said coldly. "I told you not to mistake their peace treaties for weakness. The humans did not come to join us. They came to measure us, and now every soldier they show us is a reminder. They want us to know exactly what we are dealing with." Silence again, heavy, suffocating. Finally, Varric asked the question all of them were too afraid to voice. "If the special forces are this lethal, and the regular army is this vast, then what in the name of all the stars do they send when they truly mean to wage war?" The council chamber did not adjourn that night. Too many eyes had been opened, too many shadows of fear crawling across every mind in the room. For hours debates flared and died, sparks of argument smothered under the weight of one truth. The humans were not like the others. They had brought nothing new to the council. No revolutionary technology, no rare element, no philosophies of enlightenment. What they had brought was soldiers, soldiers unlike any that had ever marched beneath alien suns. Counselor Bryn finally slammed his spindly fingers against the obsidian table, the sound sharp and cracking. "We sit here pretending to be shocked. But what use is our shock? The humans are already within our borders, trading, colonizing, sending their advisors to frontier worlds. Every cycle more of them arrive. If we wait, they will not need to fight us. They will simply replace us." Varric's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Do you propose war, Bryn? War against a species that bleeds conflict? You saw their special forces, 8 men carved through the Drenhull like meat. If that is what they unleash in secret, then open war with their regulars would be a massacre." Bryn's translucent face darkened, veins flashing beneath his skin. "Then what do you propose?" "We do nothing. We let them grow, let them build more armies under our noses until even speaking of resistance is suicide." Ambassador Torv raised a claw, his voice steady but edged with unease. "Perhaps not war, not yet, but isolation. Containment. We refuse them treaties. We deny them trade routes. We use bureaucracy as a shield. Let them choke on their own aggression." A bitter laugh rose from another delegate, one with long whip-like tendrils. "Containment. You cannot contain fire by pretending it isn't burning your house. The humans will not care if we deny them access. They will take it. Did you not see their histories? Every time one tribe tried to contain another, the result was always war, and it was always blood." The chamber descended into argument once more, 17 voices snapping, growling, buzzing until the war strategist's voice silenced them again. "You speak as though humans think as you do. They do not. You believe in the preservation of power, in the endurance of empire. The humans believe in something else." The strategist's many eyes gleamed in the chamber's dim light. "They believe survival is victory, not the survival of a government, not of a bloodline, but of the species. That is why they train every soldier like a wolf in a pack. That is why even their regulars march like predators, because they carry the memory of extinction in their bones. They have survived ice, famine, fire, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed any of us. Do you not see? Their special forces are terrifying, not because of their strength, but because they are only the tip of a mountain. We cannot yet see the bottom of. The silence that followed was thicker than any argument, and while the council spoke of dread and theories on the other side of the galaxy, the humans prepared the Terran forward operating base on Sinrali's prime stretched like a scar across the red desert. Rows of barracks, artillery imp placements, and landing pads shimmered in the heat. Drones hummed overhead. Watching recording training, Colonel Reeves stood on the command tower, arms folded behind his back. He was not Special Forces. He was not a decorated hero nor a man of headlines. He was simply an officer overseeing 10,000 soldiers on rotation through Sinindales. And that was exactly why the council feared him. Below the parade grounds roared with noise, platoon drilled under the blazing sun, sweat cutting lines through the grime on their faces. Rifles cracked in rhythm, explosions rolled from the live fire range. Tanks growled across the sand, leaving smoking trails as their cannons boomed. Reeves watched it all with the cold pride of a man who had seen war, bled for it, and knew what it demanded. These were not his best, they were not even his better, they were ordinary recruits molded into soldiers by a machine perfected through centuries of conflict. Beside him, a visiting liaison from Earth's diplomatic corps shifted uneasily. Colonel, the council is beginning to resist our trade offers. Some delegates are whispering about containment policies, sanctions. Reeves didn't look away from the drills. Let them whisper. The liaison frowned. With respect, sir. Isolation could damage our economy. Humanity still needs what the council provides. The colonel cut him off. His voice was gravel ground down by years in the field. You think soldiers are just muscle. You think what we do here is separate from your politics, but look at them. He gestured at the soldiers below. 10,000 men and women, most of them no older than 20. They've learned to fight in deserts, jungles, mountains, ruins. They've learned to move, kill, and keep moving. They can survive on a ration bar for weeks, march 50 m with blood in their boots, and still fight when the time comes. They're not special forces. They're not elite. They're regular, and that's what makes them terrifying. The liaison's mouth worked, but no words came. Reeves leaned closer, because if the council pushes us, if they try to choke us out, it won't be your sanctions that matter, it'll be them, the regulars. And when 10,000 regulars land on a world that's never seen war, what happens? Then tell me. The liaison looked away. Back in the council chamber, Varric was pacing now, his claws clicking against the stone floor. If we cannot fight them directly, then we must erode them indirectly. Sabotage, propaganda, divide them as they once divided themselves. Torv's claw tapped the table. You assume their divisions are weaknesses. Perhaps they are, but perhaps they are fuel. Every human war has only sharpened them. Further, what if we hand them enemies, only to see them grow stronger in the fire? The war strategist raised a bony finger. You do not understand. Humanity has a rhythm, a cycle. They fight themselves until an enemy unites them. Then they turn outward. If you give them reason to believe we are that enemy, you will see unity unlike anything in this galaxy. That is when their special forces will no longer be rare. That is when every soldier becomes special forces. Bryn slammed the table again, trembling. Then what is your solution? Strategist, sit idle, hope they grow bored. They are predators. Predators do not grow bored. They grow hungry. The strategist's many eyes blinked, slow and deliberate. My solution is patience. Watch them. Learn them, do not provoke them, yet for now humans remain a blade in its sheath, but if you force their hand, if you make them believe we fear them, then they will draw that blade, and none of us will live to see it sheathed again. The words hung heavy. No one wanted to admit the truth, but it sat in the chamber like a stone, too heavy to lift. Weeks later on Sindrius Prime, Colonel Reeves received new orders. A council world had denied human traders access to its ports. Supplies were turned away, goods seized. A message thinly veiled that humanity's spread would no longer go unchallenged. Reeves gathered his officers in the war room. The hollow map glowed with the contested routes, council fleets patrolling like wolves around a carcass. One captain leaned forward, jaw tight. They want to see if we'll flinch. Another spat onto the floor. They don't know us very well. Reeves studied the map. He thought of the council watching their recordings, whispering about special forces dreading the regulars. He thought of the soldiers outside drilling under the unforgiving sun, waiting for the day their discipline would be tested. They're already afraid of us, Reeves said finally, but fear alone isn't enough. We'll show them what happens when they think our regulars are just men with rifles. The officers nodded. Not one of them doubted, not one of them hesitated, because they were human, and to be human was to fight. By the time the council reconvened, the first reports were already arriving. A council patrol had intercepted a human supply convoy. They expected compliance. Instead, the convoy's escort, a single company of regular infantry, had not only defended the ships but destroyed the patrol outright. Minimal human losses, maximum council casualties. The chamber erupted in panic. They cannot be allowed to escalate. They already have. They annihilated an entire patrol fleet. They will bring war to our worlds. The war strategist's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You fools. You've already brought war. You wanted to see the regular army. Now you will see it. And far away, in the dust and heat of Sinandale's prime, 10,000 soldiers marched as one, their boots pounding the earth like drums of war. They were not elite. They were not legends. They were ordinary. And they were coming. The world of Dredgelin had never known war. Its skies were a soft emerald blue, its oceans shimmering silver beneath the twin suns. Vast plains stretched for miles, dotted with crystalline cities that glittered like jewels scattered across the land. For centuries, its people, the Krill, had thrived in peace. Their culture, woven with music, architecture, and philosophy. They had fleets, of course, but those fleets were meant for trade, not blood. Their soldiers were ceremonial, a mere formality in a galaxy where the council promised safety. That illusion shattered when the humans arrived. It began with the sky darkening, not with storm clouds, but with drop ships, sleek angular machines descending in formation, blotting out the light. Sirens howled through Dreelin's capital city, alarms the Krell had never heard outside of drills. Civilians rushed into the streets, their crystalline skin flashing with panic as they stared upward. Then the first wave landed, 10,000 human infantry, boots striking the ground in unison, rifles gleaming under the alien suns. The Krill defenders scrambled to form ranks, but their numbers were pitiful compared to the endless tide of soldiers pouring. From the ships, Colonel Reeves stood at the forefront, his helmet tucked beneath one arm. His eyes scanned the alien city, its tall spires, its terrified civilians, its stumbling defenders. He felt no hatred for them, no anger, just the cold resolve of a man doing what history demanded: establish perimeter. He barked, the soldiers fanned out. Instantly, their movements sharp, coordinated. Drones zipped overhead, mapping the terrain, marking targets. Tanks rolled from the heavier carriers, their engines rumbling like thunder. Artillery platforms unfolded with mechanical precision, already locking onto potential defensive positions. The Creon tried to resist. Their ceremonial guard fired volley after volley of plasma bolts, the air sizzling with blue energy, but the humans moved with the precision of predators. Squads advanced, under cover fire, cutting down defenders with bursts of disciplined rifle fire. Grenades arced into clusters of crown soldiers, detonating with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, the defenders broke. Crown had numbers, but not training, not the will. Their weapons wavered, their lines collapsed, and the humans pressed forward, unstoppable. One crayon officer, tall, his crystalline armor shimmering, charged at Reeves with a glowing spear, a relic weapon meant for ceremony more than war. Reeves didn't flinch. He drew his sidearm and fired once. The officer dropped instantly, his body shattering like glass. Reeves holstered the weapon and kept walking. Back in the council chamber, reports flooded in. The humans have invaded Dredgelin. They landed 10,000 troops in the capital. Within the first hour, they are slaughtering the defenders. Our feeds show hundreds dead already. We told you. We warned you this would happen. Chamber descended into chaos, voices shouting over one another until the war strategist slammed his staff against the floor. Enough. The sound echoed through the stone chamber, silencing even the loudest delegates. His eyes burned with grim certainty. You thought the humans would posture, that they would intimidate, that they would bluff. You were wrong. They do not bluff. When they say they will fight, they fight. And when they fight, they do not stop until the enemy is broken. Torvik's voice shook. But why Drelin? The Krill are not warriors, not enemies. They are philosophers, artists. The strategist's many eyes flicked toward him. Precisely because the humans are sending us a message. They did not choose a warrior world. They chose a peaceful one. They want us to know that even our softest, most innocent will not be spared if we stand against them. Varric hissed. Then we must respond with force. Mobilize the fleets. Send the legions and doom us all. The strategist snapped. You saw what they did to your patrol fleet. That was one company. One company. Now they have deployed 10,000. Do you understand what that means? You are not facing soldiers. You are facing a civilization that has been at war with itself for millennia. This is simply their nature. Bryn's translucent skin pulsed with fear. If they continue, if they occupy Drelin, the others will panic. The council will fracture. The strategist's voice lowered to a deadly whisper. Then perhaps it already has. On Drelin, panic consumed the streets. Civilians ran in every direction, their crystalline bodies flashing in terror as human troops advanced. Squad Alpha 7 kicked in the door of a Kralin government building, their boots pounding across marble floors. The defenders inside, clerks, guards, Administrators were swept aside in second. One soldier raised his fist, signaling silence, and the squad secured the building floor by floor. Sergeant Mallory, helmet scratched from the skirmish, muttered into his comms. Command Alpha 7, building secure. Resistance minimal, civilians compliant. Copy Alpha 7, came the reply. Hold position until further orders. Reinforcements inbound. Mallory leaned against a shattered pillar, lighting a cigarette despite the chaos around him. Hell of a war, he muttered. Feels like they ain't even fighting back. Private Hennon, younger, barely 20, looked uneasy. Sir, they don't know how to look at them. They're not warriors. They're just people. Mallory exhaled smoke, eyes hard. Then they picked the wrong galaxy to live in. By the second day, Dreelan's capital was firmly under human control. The Crayon government had surrendered after their leadership was captured in a swift nighttime raid. Human flags now draped over government buildings, tanks patrolling the streets while drones scanned for resistance. Colonel Reeves walked through the occupied city, his soldiers saluting as he passed. Drill. Civilians watched from the shadows of alleys and broken windows, their faces glowing faintly with fear. A young soldier approached him, saluting sharply. Sir, occupation proceeding as planned. Minimal resistance. Casualties on our side negligible. Reeves nodded. Good, keep it that way. Secure their infrastructure, their communications, their energy grids. We didn't come here to burn their world. We came to show the council what happens when they think we're weak. The soldier hesitated. Sir, some of the men, they're saying this doesn't feel like war, feels like we're beating up on civilians. Reeves stopped, turning to face him. His eyes were cold but not unkind. You think the council cares about civilians? You think they'll hesitate to starve? Hours to cut our people off, to leave colonies to die in the void. War isn't fair, son. War isn't clean. War is about survival, and if we don't make them afraid, they'll crush us before we ever have a chance. The soldier swallowed hard, then nodded. Yes, sir. Reeves watched him march off, his jaw tightening. He didn't relish the occupation. He didn't enjoy seeing civilians cower at the sight of human soldiers. But this was how history worked. Power was written in blood, and the council had to learn that humanity's pen was sharper than theirs. By the end of the week, the council had convened again. Dreelan's surrender was confirmed. The Crown delegation sat absent from the chamber, their seat draped in black. This is conquest, Torv roared. This is not defense. This is not protection. This is conquest. And it will not end with Dregelin, Bryn whispered, his skin flashing with despair. Next will be another world, then another, until humanity carves an empire out of the council itself. Varric's mandibles clicked furiously. We cannot allow this. We must strike back. Assemble the fleets, crush their occupation before it spreads. The war strategist shook his head slowly. You are fools. Do you not see what they are doing? This was not conquest. This was demonstration. They have shown us their regular army, and they have shown us what happens when we provoke it. If we strike back, we give them the justification to unleash it fully, and if that happens, there will be no council left to resist. Silence fell once more. A silence of dread, a silence of inevitability. And across the galaxy, 10,000 human Soldiers stood watch over a conquered city, their boots echoing on foreign streets, their rifles gleaming under alien suns. They were not special forces, they were not elite, they were ordinary, and they had just conquered world. The occupation of Dylon was supposed to be simple. Colonel Reeves had planned it carefully: minimal destruction, infrastructure intact, government offices repurposed for command, human banners replaced crowned sigil, soldiers patrolled in shifts, and drones monitored every alley and rooftop. By military standards it was bloodless. The crown had surrendered quickly, and their leaders had been relocated to a secure compound. On paper it was perfect, but in the streets perfection meant nothing. Everywhere Reeves walked he felt their eyes. The Krill were not a warrior race, but they were proud. Their crystalline faces glowed faintly in the shadows, reflecting fear, anger, humiliation. Mothers clutched their children tighter when human patrols passed. Vendors who once filled the markets with music and chatter now sold in silence, their wares untouched. Human soldiers tried to keep order, but the tension was alive, like dry brush before a spark. One such spark came on the 9th day. A patrol in Sector 12 was ambushed, if ambush was the right word. A group of crowned civilians armed with kitchen blades and stolen tools rushed the soldiers from a side alley. They screamed with desperation, their glowing skin pulsing like fire as they lunged. The fight lasted less than a minute. Rifles barked, blood-stained the pavement, and the attackers were left broken on the ground. Sergeant Mallory reported it directly to Reeves. "Sir, we had 5 civilians attempt to strike on my men. No soldier injuries. Targets neutralized." Reeves's jaw tightened. "Civilians?" Mallory nodded. "Barely armed, looked like workers, maybe merchants, but they came at us like rabid dogs." Reeves rubbed a hand across his face. He could picture it already: their desperation, their futility. Burn the bodies quietly, no broadcasts. "The last thing we need is martyrs." "Yes, sir." But word spread anyway. It always did. The next day, a convoy transporting supplies was hit with an improvised explosive, crude but effective enough to destroy a carrier and kill 3 soldiers. By the second week, graffiti appeared on the walls, jagged symbols in crown script that translated to "We are not broken." By the third, human patrols were under constant attack, not trained assaults, not coordinated campaigns, but random bursts of defiance. Rocks thrown, fire set, knives hidden beneath robes. Children spat at soldiers when no parents were watching. Entire districts stopped trading, leaving supplies to rot rather than feeding the occupiers. Crown were not warriors, but they were learning how to resist. The council watched with growing interest. In the chamber, new reports arrived daily. Dylon was under human control, yes, but unrest was spreading. "This is their weakness," Varric hissed, mandibles clicking with excitement. "They can conquer, but they cannot hold. Already the crown bleed them with knives and fire. The longer they stay, the more they will suffer." Bryn leaned forward, translucent skin glowing faintly. "If we aid the Krell in secret, we can bleed them faster, sabotage their supply lines, arm their civilians, turn occupation into hell. Humanity may defeat armies, but can they defeat a population that refuses to submit?" Torv raised a claw. "And if they discover our hand in this, if they find our weapons in the hands of rebels, Varick's eyes narrowed. Then we deny it. Call them liars, say the Kreml found weapons on the black market, blame pirates, smugglers. Humanity thrives in war, but endless resistance, endless unrest. That is how empires die. The war strategist said nothing for a long time. His many eyes studied the table, the faint runes glowing against the black stone. Finally he spoke. You would turn civilians into weapons. That is not resistance, it is slaughter. Varick sneered. Better there. Civilians die than ours. The strategist's voice was low. Dangerous, be careful. You are not testing humanity's patience. You are testing its cruelty, and history shows their cruelty has no equal. On Dreelan, Reeves convened his officers in the war room. The hollow map of the city glowed with red markers, sites of sabotage, ambushes, resistance cells. Each day the map grew more cluttered. This isn't a military campaign anymore, Captain Alder said, shaking his head. It's insurgency. They're hitting us with whatever they can get their hands on. Homemade bombs, stolen rifles. Hell, one group tried to ram a food truck into a checkpoint. They're civilians, sir. Civilians turning into fighters. Reeves studied the map in silence. Mallory spat on the floor. We should crush them harder. Every time one of ours goes down, we take 10 of theirs. That'll shut them up. Reeves's eyes snapped up. That's not how this works. Sergeant, you turn every death into a massacre, and you don't scare them. You unite them. They'll come at us harder, stronger, with nothing left to lose. You want another Vietnam, because that's how you get another Vietnam. The room fell quiet. Younger officers looked puzzled at the reference, but they, veterans, nodded grimly. Humanity carried its own scars of insurgencies, lessons burned into their history. Captain Alder leaned forward. So what's the move, Colonel? Reeves exhaled. Slowly we adapt. We tighten patrols, fortify supply lines, keep civilians alive. Starving them won't work. Crushing them won't work. The only thing that works is breaking their will to fight without giving them a cause to unite around. That means discipline. Absolute discipline. His eyes swept the room, hard and unyielding. Any soldier caught abusing civilians, looting, or taking revenge will face court-martial. This isn't a slaughter. This is control. Mallory muttered under his breath. Control don't win wars. Reeves heard him. He didn't answer, because deep down he knew control alone wouldn't be enough. At night, Reeves walked the streets of the occupied city alone, except for a single escort drone humming at his shoulder. The spires glowed faintly under the twin moons, their crystalline surfaces fractured where explosions had scarred them. Shadows lingered in the alleys, crayon eyes glimmering like stars. As they watched the human officer pass, he stopped at a ruined fountain, the water long since drained, shattered. Statues lying in pieces. Once this place had been a square of music and laughter. Now it was silent, broken, haunted. Child stood at the edge of the square, no older than 10. His crystalline skin shimmered faintly, his eyes wide with fear and hatred. In a small hand he clutched a stone. Reeves met his gaze. Motionless. The child trembled, lifted the stone slightly, then dropped it and ran. The colonel stood there for a long time, staring at the empty square. This isn't victory, he muttered. 2 days later, the council's aide arrived. Not openly, never openly, but in hidden crates smuggled into Dylon's underground. Inside were rifles, explosives, and encrypted comms. Krill resistance, once armed only with knives and desperation, suddenly had weapons of war, and they used them. Human convoy was torn apart by a coordinated ambush, rocket fire reducing armored carriers to flaming wrecks. Government building turned garrison was leveled overnight by planted charges. Patrols disappeared in alleys there. Bodies found hanging from bridges as warnings. For the first time, human casualties climbed sharply. And for the first time, Reeves understood what the council was doing. In the council chamber, Varric gloated, "They bleed. Reports say dozens dead in the last ambush alone. Their regulars may be strong in open war, but here in the streets among civilians they will drown." Bryn added, "Every convoy they lose, every soldier that dies will weigh on their colonies. Humanity will learn that conquest is easy, but empire is impossible." The war strategist said nothing. His eyes were closed as if in mourning. "Torv noticed you disapprove." The strategist opened his eyes, voice like ice. "You are not weakening humanity. You are teaching it. You are handing it the very tools it has always used to sharpen itself. You bleed them now. But when they rise again, it will be with the memory of this resistance burned into their bones. You are forging the next war in their hearts." No one wanted to believe him, but deep down they feared he was right. On Dreelan, Colonel Reeves stared at the latest reports. Convoy ambushed, supply depot bombed, soldiers dead. He felt the weight of it pressing on his shoulders, heavier than any battlefield he had ever known. He had come here to prove humanity's strength, to intimidate the council into compliance. Instead, he was watching his men bleed in the streets, not from armies but from shadows. War was supposed to be clean, but this was endless, invisible, merciless, and he knew with cold certainty that it was only the beginning. The war on Dreelan was no longer hidden in shadows. In the early weeks, resistance had been whispers, graffiti, and knives in the dark, but by the second month of occupation it had evolved into something far deadlier. No longer desperate mobs of civilians, but trained cells striking with precision, explosives planted under patrol routes, convoys ambushed with rocket fire, supply depots bombed, snipers taking shots from the crystalline towers before vanishing into hidden tunnels. The Krell had learned, and they had help. Colonel Reeves read the intelligence reports with cold fury. Weapons unlike anything the Krell could have built were appearing in the hands of rebels, not crude blades or stolen rifles, but council-grade firearms, plasma repeaters, portable shields, even encrypted comms. Someone was feeding the resistance, and Reeves didn't need to guess who. The first major blow came on the 63rd day of occupation. A convoy transporting medical supplies and reinforcements moved through the shattered district known as Sector 9. It should have been routine and armored columns supported by drones overhead, patrols and infantry escorts, but the resistance had planned for weeks. Street collapsed beneath the lead carrier, a buried charge powerful enough to rip steel apart. Before the dust cleared, rocket fire rained down from the rooftops. The convoy's rear vehicle exploded, trapping the soldiers in a burning kill zone. The Krillin fighters emerged from the alleys like a tide, armed not with kitchen knives but with military rifles. Plasma bolts tore through the air, catching soldiers as they scrambled for cover. Drones were shot down by well-placed strikes. For 20 minutes the humans fought back with everything they had, and they did not break even. Surrounded, they moved as one, covering each other, dragging the wounded, returning fire with ruthless precision. The cave fell in waves, their bodies shattering across the rubble, but there were too many. When reinforcements finally arrived, the convoy was gone. 34 human soldiers lay dead in the streets, their bodies mutilated, their weapons stolen. The news hit the entire occupation force like a hammer. 34 dead in one day, the highest loss since the invasion began. Reeves stood in the makeshift morgue, staring at the rows of bodies beneath sheets. His officers waited for orders, but he said nothing for a long time. Finally he spoke, his voice low, graveled. "They think this is victory." Captain Alder nodded grimly. "They've grown bold, sir. They're striking openly now, and they're better armed every week. It's not just civilians anymore. They're being trained." Sergeant Mallory growled. "Then we stopped treating them like civilians. We hit back hard, block by block, burn the nests out, no mercy." Reeves turned on him, eyes blazing. "And when we do that, when we burn their homes and slaughter their people, what do you think happens? They'll multiply. For every fighter we kill, 5 more will rise out of rage. You want an endless war, that's how you get one." Mallory's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Reeves looked back at the bodies. 34 dead, 34 letters to 34 families back home. His stomach turned. This wasn't what he had wanted. The occupation was supposed to be proof of strength, not a graveyard, but war was no longer clean. The council chamber received the same reports, and unlike the humans they celebrated. "They bleed," Varric declared, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Their mighty regulars die in alleys like vermin. Every soldier that falls is a crack in their empire." Bryn leaned forward, eyes glowing faintly. "We should escalate, provide heavier arms, more training. If the Crown can hold them here, humanity's momentum will break." Torv hesitated. "And if the humans uncover our involvement, if they learn that it was the Council who armed the resistance?" Varric's laughter was sharp, bitter. "Then we deny it. Always deny it. Let them drown in the streets. They cannot prove what they suspect." The war strategist watched in silence, his many eyes unblinking. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with warning. "You are blind. Yes, they bleed now. Yes, they stumble, but you forget who they are. Humanity does not fear insurgency. Humanity is insurgency. For thousands of years they have fought wars not against armies, but against shadows, villages rising against empires, rebels against kings, guerrillas against machines. You think you are weakening them, but you are only forcing them to remember what they already know better than any of us." Chamber dismissed his words, but deep down some felt the first twinge of doubt. On Dreelan the humans adapted. They always did. The next patrols moved in smaller, faster units, weaving through the streets unpredictably. Drones swarmed overhead in overlapping grids, mapping every alley, scanning every rooftop. Soldiers learned to read the environment. A window slightly ajar, a rooftop too quiet, a crowd dispersing too quickly, signs of ambush. When the resistance struck again, they found the humans ready. A Crown unit attempted to plant explosives under a convoy route before they could finish. A swarm of drones dropped from the sky, releasing micro-munitions that shredded. Then where they stood, another cell tried to ambush a patrol in Sector 4. But as they emerged from the alleys, the humans' counter-rat attacked instantly, rifles cutting them down in disciplined volleys. By the end of the month, the casualty ratio was clear. For every human killed, 15 Kreon fighters died. And yet the insurgency did not end. It grew. Reeves gathered his officers again. They don't care how many they lose, he said, voice hard. They're not fighting to win battles, they're fighting to make us leave, to make us bleed until the cost isn't worth it, Captain Alder asked. So what do we do? Reeves stared at the map. Red markers covered half the city. Resistant cells everywhere multiplying like a disease. We show them what it means when humanity refuses to leave. The shift began slowly. At first it was stricter curfews, tighter patrols, more checkpoints every kraal had to carry. Identification, every movement watched. Entire districts were sealed off for security sweeps. Soldiers went door to door searching for weapons, interrogating families. Then came the raids. At night, squads stormed suspected safe houses, dragging fighters from their beds, dragging civilians who might have been collaborators. Some never returned. The Kree learned quickly. Speak too loudly, act too boldly, and the humans would come. But still they resisted. The council received new reports. Their response grows harsher, Torv said. Curfews, raids, executions. Dylon bleeds. On both sides now. Bryn smiled faintly. Good, the longer they stay, the uglier it becomes. Soon the galaxy will see them not as conquerors but butchers. The war strategist's voice was quiet, cold. No, you are making them inevitable. The delegates turned. The strategist continued, every time you force their hand, every time you bleed them, they become stronger, more disciplined, more ruthless. The humans are not losing control, they are perfecting it. When they leave Dreelan, it will not be as failed occupiers, it will be as masters who have learned exactly how to hold a world in fire. The chamber fell silent, but Varric only sneered. Then let them master it and let them choke on it. On Dreelan, Colonel Reeves sat alone in his quarters, the reports glowing on his hollow screen. Civilian casualties rising, soldier deaths climbing, resistance growing. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. This was not the war he had wanted, but it was the war he had been given, and he would fight it to the end. The resistance prepared for its boldest strike yet, not a convoy, not a patrol, but the heart of the occupation, the command compound itself. Smuggled explosives were moved through tunnels, hidden in food carts and water crates. Fighters prepared suicide vests, willing to die if it meant striking at the humans' leadership. The night of the attack, they moved under cover of silence, hundreds of them converging on the compound from all directions. But when they reached the gates, they found not unprepared guards, but waiting soldiers. Spotlights snapped on, drones rose from hidden launchers, and machine guns roared. The humans had known, they had anticipated. The battle was not a battle, it was a massacre. The Krill charged with desperation, but the soldiers cut them down with precision. Every squad moving like clockwork. Explosives detonated prematurely under Controlled fire, fighters burned in the streets before they could even reach the walls. When it ended, over 300 KLA dead. The humans lost too. Colonel Reeves stood over the bodies, his face a mask of stone. Around him his soldiers cheered quietly, celebrating their victory, but Reeves felt nothing because he knew the truth. This wasn't victory. It was escalation. And humanity had only just begun. War on Dreelan had devoured the city. What began as a conquest had rotted into an endless cycle of blood and ash. Streets that once glittered with crystalline spires were now scarred with scorch marks blackened by smoke. The once busy markets were ghost towns. Empty stalls overturned, roofs caved in from blasts. The laughter of children had vanished, replaced by the constant thrum of drones and the echo of gunfire. In the alleys, by the third month, no one called it an occupation anymore. It was a battlefield. Every block, every shadow, every rooftop and both sides were changing. The resistance had grown bold. They struck in daylight now, their fighters armed with weapons far beyond Krem design. Council-grade rifles burned through human armor, portable mines, shredded patrols. Even their tactics had improved. Coordinated assaults planned, retreats, feints designed to draw soldiers into ambushes. One morning, a suicide bomber disguised as a food vendor detonated himself at a checkpoint, killing 12 soldiers and wounding dozens more. The explosion shattered windows across 4 blocks, the flames licking the sky as civilians screamed. That night, another bomb detonated beneath a barracks, killing 30 more in their sleep. For the first time since the invasion began, the regulars bled in numbers too high to ignore. Reeves stood in the rubble of the barracks, the stench of charred flesh thick in the air. His soldiers moved through the ruins in silence, dragging bodies, searching for survivors. The colonel's jaw was clenched so hard it ached. Captain Alder approached, his face pale. "We can't keep absorbing this, sir. Not like this. They're not just civilians anymore. They're soldiers now. Someone's training them." Reeves didn't answer immediately. He knew Alder was right. The council's fingerprints were all over this insurgency, but proving it was another matter. And even if he did, what? Then start a war with the entire council. Humanity wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Mallory stormed up, fury in his eyes. "We're fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. You keep telling us to hold discipline, to keep it clean, but they don't fight clean, sir. They hide behind civilians, behind children. They're butchers, and we're the ones dying for your restraint." Reeves turned on him, his voice like a blade. "Discipline is the only thing keeping us from turning into monsters." Mallory spat on the ground. "Monsters. They already call us that. Every alley I walk, I see it in their eyes. Maybe it's time we become what they fear." The words hung heavy between them, and Reeves didn't answer because deep down he feared Mallory was right. The council chamber erupted with reports of the latest attacks. The Krell resistance destroyed 2 barracks in 1 week. Human casualties climb higher every day. Their occupation is bleeding them dry. Varric's mandibles clicked with glee. "Excellent, let them drown in their own arrogance." Bryn leaned forward, voice sharp. "More they kill, the more humanity suffers politically. Already their colonies question the wisdom of this war. If this continues, their people may Turn against it, the council need only feed the fire. But Torv was less certain. His claws tapped the table nervously, and if they do not break, if they endure, the humans are not like us. Every report shows their adaptability, their relentlessness. What if this insurgency only hardens them? The war strategist's voice was cold, absolute. That is exactly what it is doing. The chamber went silent. The strategist's eyes glimmered. Every weapon you give the resistance, every soldier they kill, every bomb that explodes, those are lessons. Lessons humanity learns faster than anyone. You are not breaking them. You are forging them, and when the time comes, the soldiers who survive Drelin will be unlike anything this galaxy has ever seen. The others dismissed him. They always did, but in their hearts, the first seeds of dread had taken root. Reeves sat in his quarters staring at the reports. His soldiers were dying. Civilians were suffering. The city was collapsing into ruin. And still the Kreln fought. He poured himself a drink, the amber liquid burning down his throat. He had seen war before, jungles, deserts, cities. He had fought insurgents, rebels, militias. He knew this kind of war didn't end with victory parades. It ended with broken soldiers and mass graves. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. It was Private Hennon, the young soldier, who had once questioned the occupation's morality. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "Sir, I need to talk to you." Reeves gestured for him to enter. Hennon sat staring at the floor. "We were on patrol in Sector 4. A kid ran at us. Couldn't have been older than 12. He had something in his hands, Sergeant." Mallory shouted to shoot, but I hesitated. Reeves said nothing, letting him speak. "He had a bomb, sir. Small, but enough. It went off. 2 men dead. Another 3 wounded." Henson's voice cracked. "If I'd fired, they'd still be alive." Reeves felt the weight of it like a stone in his chest. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "This war will break you if you let it, but hesitation breaks faster. Don't forget that." Hen's eyes brimmed with tears. "We're not fighting soldiers, we're killing children, families. This isn't war, it's slaughter." Reeves' hand tightened into a fist. He wanted to argue, to tell Hennon this was survival, not slaughter, but the words stuck in his throat because he wasn't sure he believed them anymore. By the 4th month, the humans had adapted fully. Patrols no longer hesitated. Any sign of threat, any suspicious movement, any hidden hand was met with immediate fire. Buildings suspected of housing resistance cells were destroyed with artillery. Entire blocks flattened to deny cover. When bombs exploded, the humans didn't just hunt the attackers, they punished entire districts. Curfews turned into lockdowns. Families were herded into camps for security screenings. Supplies were rationed to the edge of starvation. The resistance answered with more ferocity. Suicide bombers targeted food lines. Snipers picked off guards at camps. Underground cells broadcasted recordings of human raids showing bodies dragged from homes, children screaming, civilians beaten in the streets. The war had become one of fear, and both sides wielded it like a weapon. The council's feeds broadcast those recordings too. "They are exposed," Varric hissed. "The galaxy sees them for what they are. Conquerors, butchers. Humanity will never recover its reputation." The war strategist shook his head. Slowly, "No, the galaxy does not fear Butchers it pies them, what the galaxy will fear is the men who returned from Dredgelin alive, because those men will have walked through fire and ash and survived, and when they return to Earth they will teach others what they have learned. Then you will see the true army of humanity. But no one listened. On Dredgelin, Colonel Reeves sat with his senior officers. The map of the city was a maze of red zones, each one marked with violence. We've reached the point of no return, Captain Alder said. The resistance won't stop. We can't kill our way to victory. They'll keep fighting until there's nothing left of the city. Reeves's eyes were hollow. Then we take the city with us. The officers stared at him. Reeves continued, if they want to burn Dredgelin to the ground, then we'll burn it faster. We'll break them so hard the rest of the council will think twice before lifting a finger against us. Let them see what happens when humanity decides to end a war. Mallory grinned, savage and eager. Alder looked sick, but no one argued, because they all knew this was no longer about occupation. This was about survival. And so it began. District by district, the humans unleashed fire. Artillery reduced blocks to rubble. Airstrikes pounded resistance strongholds until nothing but ash remained. Camps filled with civilians suspected of collaboration. Mass arrests became routine. Executions followed. The Kralin fought harder, but every act of defiance only brought greater destruction. For every bomb that exploded, a district burned. For every sniper's bullet, a family disappeared. By the 6th month, Dredgelin was no longer a city. It was a graveyard, and the humans still marched there. Discipline unbroken, their will unshaken. They were not special forces. They were not legends. They were regular soldiers, and they had become monsters. The city of Dredgelin was unrecognizable. 6 months had passed since the first human dropships blackened its skies. What had once been a jewel of crystalline towers and silver streets was now a scar carved into the world. Towers stood cracked. Smoke rose daily, and the once proud plazas were lined with rubble and blood. Every street was a battlefield, every shadow a threat. Colonel Reeves had long since abandoned the illusion of occupation. This wasn't control anymore. It was war. Ugly, endless, merciless war. The resistance had learned faster than anyone expected. They no longer fought like scattered civilians with stolen blades. They moved in cells now, coordinated through encrypted channels supplied by council benefactors. Their ambushes were professional, their bombs more precise, their weapons deadlier with every passing week. One night, 3 simultaneous attacks ripped through human lines. An ammunition depot detonated in a fireball that shook half the city. A barracks set aflame by infiltrators, and a convoy annihilated by mines buried beneath the street. 47 soldiers dead in a single night. Reeves stared at the reports in silence. The numbers burned into his mind, each name a weight he could never put down. Sergeant Mallory stormed into the command tent, his face grimy with soot and rage. We can't keep bleeding like this, Colonel. Every day, another ambush, another bomb, another patrol cut down. We're not fighting soldiers, we're fighting a whole damned population, and if you ask me, that makes them all the enemy. Captain Alder cut in sharply. You start treating civilians like combatants, Sergeant, and this war becomes genocide. Mallory's voice was a growl. It's already genocide. They're killing us any way they can. Henson's squad got hit yesterday. Sniper fire from a rooftop while they were handing out food, sir. You tell me that wasn't civilians. You tell me that wasn't war. Reeves sat silent for a long moment, his face shadowed by the flicker of the hollow map. Finally he spoke. This isn't about civilians or soldiers anymore. This is about survival. If they want total war, we'll give them total war, but we'll do it with discipline. No chaos, no butchery. Every strike will be calculated, every raid purposeful. We'll crush the resistance, but we won't turn this into slaughter. Mallory spat on the ground. Slaughter is what wins wars. Reeves' gaze hardened. Slaughter is what loses empires. The council chamber was filled with whispers of victory, reports of human casualties spread like wildfire through the galaxy. 40 dead here, 50 there. Bombing, snipers. Dreelan had become a quagmire. Varric spoke with relish. The mighty humans are trapped there. Soldiers bleed daily. Their so-called regulars are no match for a population that refuses to submit. Bryn's translucent skin pulsed with satisfaction. We will continue to arm the Krem. Already our shipments have tripled their effectiveness. If we maintain this, Dreelan will become humanity's grave. Tav shifted uneasily. And if humanity does not break, if they endure this, if they adapt. The war strategist's voice was cold. They are already adapting. They do not break, they sharpen. Every soldier who survives this fire will return harder, deadlier, and they will train the next wave with blood on their hands. You think you are killing them, but you are carving monsters out of men, and monsters once made do not go back in their cages. The chamber quieted, but ambition outweighed fear. On the ground the humans adapted. Patrols no longer followed patterns. Drones mapped the city in grids, scanning every rooftop, every window, every heat signature. Checkpoints were reinforced with overlapping fields of fire. Civilians were searched, cataloged, monitored. When bombs went off, the response was swift. Whole districts were locked down. Suspected safe houses were raided. Anyone caught with a weapon was executed in the street. And then came the black squads, specialized human units, still regulars but hardened by months of attrition, moved at night, striking resistance cells with ruthless precision. They kicked down doors, dragged fighters from their beds, interrogated them until dawn. Sometimes the screams carried for blocks. Sometimes no one came back at all. Word spread quickly through the city. The humans were no longer just occupiers. They were hunters. Private Henson felt it most of all. He had been on Dreelan since the first dropships. He had seen the surrender, the first bombs, the ambushes, the massacres. His eyes, once wide with youth, were now cold, distant. One night he sat cleaning his rifle in silence, his hands moving mechanically. Mallory watched him for a moment before speaking. You hesitated once, kid. You still hesitating? Henson's jaw tightened. Not anymore. Mallory grinned, but there was no joy in it. Good. Hesitation gets you killed. And out here it gets everyone else killed too. Henson didn't answer. He just kept cleaning his rifle, the barrel glinting in the dim light. By the 7th month, the war had shifted. The Crown still fought, still bled humanity in the alleys, but the humans bled slower now. Their tactics had hardened, their discipline sharpened into steel. Every Ambush was answered with overwhelming retaliation. Every bomb led to executions, and then came the event that changed everything. The Crown detonated a massive charge beneath a human supply depot, one of the largest blasts since the war began. Over 80 soldiers killed. In an instant, the shockwave flattened half a district, fire consuming the night sky. It was the bloodiest day of the occupation, and it was the day humanity stopped pretending. Colonel Reeves stood in the rubble, the flames painting his face orange. His soldiers worked frantically, dragging charred bodies from the ruins. The air wire of smoke, burning metal and death. He didn't shout, he didn't rage. His voice when it came was calm. Terrifyingly calm, no more restraint. Captain Alder's eyes widened. Sir Reeves, cut him off. They want fire, we'll give them fire. They want to bleed us, we'll drown them. From this moment every resistance cell, every collaborator, every hiding place, wiped out district by district, block by block, until there's nothing left but silence. Mallory's grin was savage. Alder looked sick, but no one argued. The purge began that night. Artillery hammered suspected resistance strongholds until they were nothing but craters. Airstrikes reduced entire neighborhoods to rubble. Soldiers stormed houses, dragging civilians into the streets. Anyone suspected of aiding the insurgency was executed on the spot. The city screamed. The Kremlin fought harder than ever, but every act of defiance was met with overwhelming destruction. A sniper killed 2 soldiers. The entire block he fired from was burned. A bomb detonated in a marketplace. The district was evacuated. Its residents vanished into camps. A cell planted mines beneath a patrol route. 10 suspected collaborators were hung from bridges as warnings. The humans had become what the council feared most. Not special forces, not elites, just ordinary soldiers turned into monsters by war. The council received the reports with shock. They are massacring them, Torv cried. Entire districts burned. Civilians executed in the streets. Varric sneered. Good, let them reveal their true nature. The galaxy will turn against them. The war strategists' many eyes glittered. No, the galaxy will fear them, and fear lasts longer than outrage. By the 8th month, Drielin was broken. The resistance still fought, but their numbers were dwindling. Their safe houses destroyed, their leaders executed, their weapons captured. Civilians lived in terror, hiding from both humans and their own fighters. The city was dead, a graveyard lit by fire, and the humans still marched, their boots echoing on streets of ash. They had come as conquerors, they had become monsters. And the council, watching from afar, realized too late the truth. They had not trapped humanity in Dredgelin. They had unleashed it. The war on Drielin ended not with surrender, but with silence. The fighting hadn't stopped because the Krill no longer had the will. It stopped because they no longer had the numbers. The city, once alive with music and light, was now a husk of ash and shadows. Resistance cells that had once terrorized the occupiers were gone. Their leaders executed, their safe houses leveled, and yet for every victory the humans claimed, Dredgelin looked less like a conquest and more like a grave. Colonel Reeves stood on a balcony overlooking what remained of the capital. Smoke drifted from broken towers, the air stank of scorched stone, and bodies that had never been buried. The streets were empty, save for patrols. of human soldiers moving with mechanical precision, their rifles gleaming under the pale twin suns. The colonel's face was carved with exhaustion. His hair had gone gray at the edges, his eyes hollow. From sleepless nights, he had won, but he felt no triumph because there was nothing left to triumph over. In the barracks, the soldiers whispered about what they had become. Private Hennon no longer smiled. His hands shook sometimes when he wasn't holding a rifle, but in battle he was ice. He had stopped asking questions months ago. Now he only fought, obeyed, and survived. Sergeant Mallory, once hot-tempered, now spoke with a chilling calm. He carried out raids without hesitation, his men following his orders like shadows. The war had stripped him of rage, leaving behind something sharper, like steel that had been tempered in fire. Even the green recruits who rotated into drill and didn't stay green for long. A month in the city was enough to harden them. Their eyes grew cold, their movements precise. They learned to spot ambushes before they happened, to shoot before hesitation cost lives, to march through blood without slowing their stride. Drielin had changed them all. Ordinary soldiers had become something else, something the galaxy would remember. The council chamber was chaos. Reports of the purge had spread beyond Drielin, images of burning districts, mass executions, and soldiers marching through rubble were smuggled out by Krillin refugees. The feeds played across the galaxy, showing humanity's ruthlessness in every broadcast. "This is atrocity," Torv roared, slamming his claw against the table. Entire districts flattened, civilians butchered. This is no occupation, and it is extermination. Bryn's translucent skin pulsed with unease. And yet they have won. The Krill are broken. Dylon is under human control. Varric's mandibles clicked with sharp laughter. Yes, let them reveal themselves for what they are. Let the galaxy see the truth. Humanity is no ally, no equal. They are predators in uniform. This will unite us against them. The war strategist's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. You are wrong. All eyes turned. Strategist's many eyes glowed faintly in the dim chamber. The galaxy does not unite against predators. It hides from them. It fears them, and fear lasts longer than outrage. He leaned forward. You armed the KU, fed the insurgency, and what did you accomplish? You forged an army in fire. Every soldier who survives Drielin carry these lessons home. They will train others, and the next time humanity fights, it will not be Drielin that burns, it will be us. Silence fell like a hammer, but no one could deny the truth. On the ground, Reeves walked through the ruins of a Krell district that had once resisted fiercely. Now it was dust and rubble, its residents dead or scattered. His boots crunched on shattered crystal, the only sound in a city that had forgotten music. He stopped at what had once been a school. The roof was gone, the walls pocked with gunfire. A charred desk lay overturned, a child's toy half buried in ash beside it. Reeves bent down and picked up the toy, a small crystalline figure, its edges cracked. He held it for a long moment, staring. This wasn't victory, this was survival. And survival always came with a cost. Behind him, Mallory approached. "Sector's clear, sir. No more hostiles." Reeves didn't turn. "How many civilians?" "Left, none." The colonel closed his eyes. For a moment, he felt the weight of it. The silence, the emptiness, the ghosts of the city. Then he set the toy down and walked away, Weeks later, transports began fing soldiers off-world. Not all. Many were needed to hold the ashes, but rotations had to begin. The first units to leave were those who had been there since the beginning. They didn't leave as they had arrived. When they had first landed, they had marched with eagerness, their uniforms sharp, their eyes bright. Now they marched in silence, their armor scarred, their faces hollow. They moved with perfect precision, every step in unison, as if their souls had been welded into one machine. Civilians from other colonies watched the recordings of those soldiers returning. Some saw heroes, some saw monsters, but all saw something to be feared, because these weren't special forces. These were regular soldiers, and yet they carried themselves like legends. Private Henson was among them. When he stepped onto the transport, he barely recognized himself. His hands were calloused, his eyes hard. He had seen children with bombs, mothers with knives, fathers with rifles. He had killed them all, and each time a piece of him had died too, but another piece had grown stronger. He sat in silence on the transport, staring at the stars as the ship lifted off. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said enough. The others were the same. They didn't cheer, didn't laugh, didn't even talk much. They were men and women who had walked through hell and come out alive. And that survival carried a weight the galaxy would never understand. The Council tried to spin the narrative. They broadcasted images of atrocities, desperate to rally worlds against humanity, but the effect was not unity. It was fear. Worlds whispered in secret. If this is what ordinary soldiers do, what happens if humanity sends their elites? Others asked, if this is how they fight on one world, what happens when they fight on many? The Council had wanted to expose humanity as butchers. Instead, they had painted them as unstoppable. In his private quarters, the war strategist recorded his thoughts, knowing they would one day be read by someone who needed the warning. History will not remember Draylon as a council victory. It will remember it as the crucible that birthed humanity's true army. They came as conquerors, and we thought to break them. Instead, we forged them. From this day on, every human soldier who wears that uniform will carry the ghost of Dredgelin. They will fight not as individuals, but as predators, and the galaxy will tremble at the sound of their march on Earth. Months later, Colonel Reeves stood before a tribunal. He was asked to explain the occupation, the casualties, the destruction. Politicians wanted answers, wanted to know whether the war had been worth it. He said little, only this: you wanted to know what our regular army could do. Now you know. And with that, he stepped down, his shadow long across the chamber floor. The legend of Dreelan spread quickly among the KR. It was remembered as a tragedy, a massacre, genocide. Among the Council, it was whispered as a warning, a nightmare, a story to scare children. But among humans, it became something else, a reminder, a lesson, a symbol. The soldiers who had survived Dreelan trained others. They passed down their lessons, the ambushes, the bombs, the purges. They taught the next generation how to fight in shadows, how to endure when the world burned, how to become monsters if survival demanded it. And so the cycle continued. When the Council next gathered, the chamber was quieter than ever. Varric spoke with less fire. Bryn's glow had dimmed. Even Torv seemed subdued. It was the war strategist who broke the silence. You wanted to know what humanity's regular army was. Now you do, and if you are wise, you will pray you never see them again. His words hung in the air like a curse. Because they all knew the truth, Dylon was only the beginning. The silence of Dreelan echoed far beyond. Its skies, what had once been a thriving jewel of crystalline towers, was now a warning etched into the bones of the galaxy. The feeds had spread everywhere. Streets reduced to rubble, civilians herded into camps, resistance crushed in. Fire and blood, humanity had held Dredgelin, but the cost was visible in every broken building, every empty plaza, every shadow where music used to live. The galaxy had watched, and the galaxy whispered. On Earth, the soldiers who returned were not the same men and women who had left. They were silent in the streets, their eyes hard, their movements too sharp. Families embraced them, but the soldiers didn't embrace back with the same warmth. Something had been burned out of them, but in the barracks among their own, they moved as one. They drilled with an efficiency that startled even their commanders. They trained new recruits with a precision born not of manuals but of scars. Private Henson had stopped being the boy who hesitated. He was now an instructor, barking orders at fresh recruits, teaching them to see the signs of ambush, to kill before hesitation cost lives. His voice was, his eyes tired, but his words were sharp. You don't get to decide who's a threat, you just act. You hesitate, you die. You hesitate, your brothers die. Remember Dreelan. The recruits didn't understand the weight of those words, not yet, but one day they would. Sergeant Mallory thrived in this new world. He was feared and respected in equal measure. His methods were brutal, his discipline unrelenting, but no one could argue with his results. The soldiers he trained didn't just fight, they hunted. And Colonel Reeves, though promoted and paraded before politicians as the architect of victory, carried the heaviest burden of all. Every night he dreamed of Dylon, the smoke, the cries, the child with the stone he hadn't raised. He drank more than he should, slept less than he needed, and told himself the same thing every morning. It was survival, nothing more, but deep down he knew it was more. It was the rebirth of humanity. The council was tearing itself apart. The chamber that had once echoed with arrogant laughter and sharp debate was now filled with fear. We must unite, Varric roared, slamming his mandibles against the table. Humanity cannot be allowed to expand unchecked. Dreelan is proof. They are conquerors. If we hesitate, they will devour us. Bryn's translucent face flickered with unease. And how do you propose we fight them? With fleets they will adapt to, with armies they will carve apart. You saw what they did with just their regular soldiers. Torv hissed, we have the numbers if we bring all 17 worlds together. The war strategist cut him off. His voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than shouting. You think numbers will save you? Humanity has fought wars with numbers stacked against them 1,000 to 1. They are not afraid of numbers. They are not afraid of war. They are only afraid of extinction, and extinction is not what we offer them. It is what they offer us. The chamber fell into silence. For the first time in centuries, the council was not united by arrogance or ambition. It was divided by fear. On frontier colonies, the whispers grew louder. Crown refugees spoke of massacres, of entire districts burned. Traders carried tales of human patrols that moved like predators, of eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. Some worlds began closing their ports to humans, others quietly began opening them wider, hoping that cooperation might spare them from becoming the next. Dylon, fear spread faster than fire, and with fear came respect. Colonel Reeves attended a private briefing with Earth's high command. Generals and politicians filled the chamber, their faces grim. "You've given us Dylon," one general said, "a victory the galaxy cannot ignore." Rev said nothing he didn't feel victorious. Another general leaned forward. "We wanted to know what our regulars could accomplish against the Council. Now we know, you've proven it. Beyond doubt they fear us." Reeves finally spoke, his voice. "They don't fear us, they hate us, and hate is patient." The politicians exchanged uneasy glances, but the generals smiled. They only heard the word fear. They didn't understand that fear was a blade that cut both ways. The soldiers of Dreelan became something more than men and women. They became a story. Everywhere they went, the whispers followed. They survived Dregelan. The phrase carried weight, it carried terror, it carried respect. Young recruits looked at them with awe. Aliens looked at them with dread. The galaxy, once arrogant toward the new species that had joined its stars, now measured every move against the memory of Dreelan. It didn't matter that most of them were ordinary infantry, not elites, not legends. Dreelan had made them all legends anyway. In the council chamber, fear reached its peak. World after world debated what to do, strike now before humanity grew stronger, or appease them, hoping to avoid the next firestorm. Varric demanded war, Bryn demanded peace, Torv demanded sanctions, but the war strategist as always saw further than the rest. "You cannot stop them," he said quietly. "Not anymore. Dylon was your chance and you squandered it. You thought to weaken them, but you only forged them. Now every soldier they send into the stars carries the memory of that world. And memories do not die." The chamber fell silent because every delegate knew in the depths of their hearts that he was right. Reeves sat in his quarters, far from the council, far from Earth's politicians, far from cheering crowds. He poured himself a drink and stared out the window at the stars. He thought of the child with the stone. He thought of Henson's haunted eyes. He thought of Malalory's savage grin. He thought of Dreelan and how it had devoured them all, and he whispered to himself, though no one could hear, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning." Months later, the first reports came in. On a border world, a council patrol had encountered a human regiment. There was no battle, only a stare across the plains, but the council soldiers had lowered their rifles first. They had retreated without firing a shot because the humans they faced bore the insignia of Dregelan, and no one wanted to test what that meant. Legends spread like fire. The humans who had survived Dreelan were said to fight with no fear, to march without rest, to kill without hesitation. Whispers claimed they could smell an ambush before it happened, that their eyes never blinked, that they had seen death so often they no longer feared it. The council dismissed these as exaggerations. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, no one laughed, because the soldiers who had survived Dreelan were real, and the fear they carried was real too. In time, Dregelan would become a word that carried two meanings. To the Krellin it was a tragedy, a scar Memory of ashen loss, a wound that would never heal. To the council it was a warning, a reminder of what happened when humanity was provoked, of what their regular soldiers could do when pushed to the edge. And to humanity it was something else entirely. It was proof that they were ready for the galaxy, proof that their armies, ordinary as they were, could not only fight among the stars but dominate them, proof that the galaxy feared them. And in the cold halls of Earth's command centers, generals whispered to each other in private, if this is what our regulars can do, imagine what happens when we unleash our elites. Colonel Reeves never returned to Dredgeland. He didn't need to. The city lived in him, carved into his bones. He carried it wherever he went, and as he stood once more before his men, watching them march in perfect precision across the parade ground, he felt a chill run down his spine because he knew what they had become. They were not special forces, they were not elites, they were regulars, and that was enough to terrify the galaxy.